Not late. Just want to give everyone a chance to join. Let me know when you guys can hear me and if it sounds all right. All right. So, yep, this is another end of month. Somehow another month has ended. I am using the cheaper camera for this because it just works better for live streaming. I need to work out some bugs with my newer camera, and I'll get more into that soon. But hopefully you enjoyed the Navi 12 leak. That was using the new camera that is significantly higher quality than any lens I've ever owned in my life. So, but you know, people supporting me on Patreon, that's why you're supporting me, I assume, is to get better and better content. So let's see here. Yeah, like as you can say, this cheaper camera here definitely isn't picking up that TV as well, huh? But okay. So for those who have never no, actually, I'm not using my phone's camera. It is significantly worse than the camera I bought. The camera I got's more expensive than your PC, probably. So how these work is I go through the premium members who ask me questions ahead of time, usually with some research and forethought. I go through that. Then I go through loose ends from this month, which will include more Navi 12 information. And then after that, you guys can tip me if you want me to answer Q&A questions. Here we go then. So first question comes from a NetBurst supporters. Blokes asks, what is the real reason for the JEDEC memory standards to be so terribly loose? Is it because of to make it easier for production? And I think yes. I think they always start super loose with timings because for most usage, people don't really notice that. And it's more about power usage. They keep lowering power usage with new RAM standards, and I think that's what most people actually look at. But it's starting to bite them in the butt because you're starting to see like Ice Lake insist on using super high, super fast RAM, and eventually I think latency is going to become a real bottleneck to processing power. This is something that Cerebras talked about with their megalithic dies. This is something that Jim Keller talked about nonstop, frankly, when I saw him. Latency will become a bigger and bigger bottleneck to performance. So eventually that's just not going to cut it. But by then we might not even be using standard like DDR. So yeah, good question though. Blokes also asked about Quadros. I currently use a cloud gaming service platform called Shadow. Sometime at the beginning of the year, NVIDIA changed their EULA to prevent companies from using GTX cards for data centers, probably to stop crypto miners. Well, actually, that's not true, at least from what I saw. When NVIDIA updated the EULA, they actually had a carve out where they said you could use it for mining because they were making so much money from selling overproduced Pascal cards. So, no, actually, to my understanding, unless they just changed that again, correct me if I'm wrong, NVIDIA does allow you to use mining GTX cards in data centers, but that's it. That's all they allow for official support. And yeah, though your other question about using Quadros for GeForce, or GeForce, I really don't know what to say about that. Really, it seems like it's a way for them to make more money, right? So that's why they would do that. And AMD is doing that actually with Stadia, right? Stadia uses professional cards too. And it's because of virtualization, though. They have a Vega card that can, it's a dual Vega card, I think, actually, that can offload one die running like 4 games at once. And that's important because if you're using Google Stadia, you might be playing an indie game that a Vega can run in 4K, 4 instances of. But then if someone's paying premium and wants to play Assassin's Creed in 4K, you might need to use one, or they may even let you pay to scale up several different cards at the same time. That's what's so brilliant about how Stadia could work if it works. Trust me, we'll need to see if Stadia works. I don't believe that it necessarily will, but eventually that would be brilliant if you could have a premium subscription where they let you use 4 Vegas and Crossfire at once. So that's one reason they might use Quadros or professional cards from AMD, Fire Pro cards, instead of GeForce cards, because they don't have the support for running multiple instances, at least not as well. Okay, so that was that question. Hopefully I answered it well. I got a tip here, which I'll answer now so I don't forget it, actually. Maybe save the tips for later, but I'll answer it. Favorite car in the market right now? I actually like Alfa Romeos a lot, and Camaros, Impala's pretty good. Porsche makes some pretty cool SUVs. Teslas, of course, might make most cars obsolete. They certainly don't yet, but we'll see. Rivian's working on some cool electric cars. You know, almost every Honda's always pretty decent. I don't like how Hondas look right now, though. They just look like Transformers. Like they've gotten too Transformer looking for my taste, but some people clearly do like them. But yeah, hopefully that answers your thing. They also like Mazda. I don't know. There's a lot of stuff. Almost every company makes at least one good car, right? Or they wouldn't have business. All right. Ad Close asks, just like you can if you support me on Patreon. I seem to remember some at Intel a while back saying that 7 nanometer was progressing well. If it's on EUV, that takes a lot of mask layers and apparently is a bit easier than 10 nanometer. I suspect that is behind TSMC's progress to 5 nanometer, though. Yes, I think TSMC is going to be on 5 nanometer before Intel's on 7. I do think they may even be, yeah. I mean, I think TSMC will be producing high performance 5 nanometer, probably not big dies, but probably in 2021. I think next year is 6 nanometer and 7 nanometer EUV. And then 5 nanometer may ramp up for smartphones in 2021. I do not expect Intel on 7 nanometer till 2022. But then he brings up Samsung, and they may want to use them. So again, this is something I talk about. Yeah, I think Intel may go to Samsung for some specific chips, or even maybe TSMC, but they have capacity requirements. They cannot use Samsung manufacturing as an ultimate crutch, I guess is how I would put it. They're always going to need to be able to make most of their chips on their own fabs. And so that's why they just need to get there. That's why they just need to get to 7 nanometer so badly. Because even if the performance is worse, at least they could pump out a bazillion chips and bin them. All right, so Caden writes in and asks, the way you talk about Turing RTX is similar to your description of NVIDIA's Kepler. Do you think it will fall off the same way Kepler did? Is this a proper comparison? That's an interesting point, Caden, and I actually talk about this in the new Broken Silicon with Paul, not an Apple fan. By the way, the new Broken Silicon will come out for premium supporters on Monday, and then it will come out to the rest of you on Tuesday. So, no, and then again, Broken Silicon is weekly now. I'm up in the content. We talk about this in depth. What I'll say early is that I don't think anything is going to age as badly as Kepler, guys. There's just no way. The way I've had it explained to me is that Kepler fixed the power usage issues in Fermi and allowed them to scale up Q-cores a ton, but it only really was efficient if you program for it in a really specific way. Like Kepler required a lot of maintenance. We mentioned cars, kind of like some of the older German cars. They actually were really reliable if you kept the maintenance up. But if you stop the maintenance, it falls apart. That's Kepler. They didn't nerf Kepler. That makes absolutely no sense. They just stopped putting in a lot of effort to support it. And because of that, its performance has fallen off a cliff. I don't see that happening to Maxwell, Pascal, or to Turing, because the fact of the matter is Maxwell will always have that brute FP32 performance, and so will Pascal. Now, eventually, I would say by 2021, because of the PlayStation 5, there will be certain compute things that Maxwell and Pascal just can't do. But you notice they still use Pascal in the MX250, and that's because it's a 70 millimeter square die. Turing is big. And so it still has use for FP32. Frankly, it's like an FP32 ASIC. And Turing has so many compute functions that will make it last a decent amount. However, I do think it's an apt comparison to Kepler in so much that the ray tracing performance will be basically non-existent within a year, as my opinion of Turing. It's like, it's just not going to be there because Turing just doesn't have the proper ray tracing performance to go the full 10 yards. It's always going to be for demos, which if that's why you bought it, well, you got to play ray tracing before everyone else. Honestly, you did. But in terms of actually running 4K ray traced 120 hertz games, which is going to be the standard within a few years, no, it's just not going to do that. Its performance and ray tracing will fall off a cliff, and it may lose to GCN eventually because GCN is just better supported. Much like the same way Kepler lost performance when it wasn't specifically programmed for. And then that's a game engine developer reached out to me as well. He said that the problem with Turing is that you basically have to build an engine around Turing for it to work. And actually, it is much stronger than Vega at ray tracing, but you have to build an engine around it. Problem is, no one's building an engine around an architecture that won't last forever and that won't be the standard for consoles. So I hopefully I answered that question. Okay. Sid Lives writes in and asks, Zen 3, 4, and beyond. Other than performance, what do we get in Zen 3 and 4? And others talked about the concepts of custom chiplet configurations and some future architecture. That certainly is part of the beyond, but I'm just asking more in the near term. So, and there were a couple other Zen questions here. Ruben Shower asks, with the advent of Zen, are we just going to keep getting double performance, or is there going to be a change in capabilities with Zen 3? And yeah, I think there is. I think that Zen 3 is going to be the start of the seismic shift. So Zen 1, and I've explained this before, Zen 1, the way I look at it, basically was better overall than Intel, what they had. But the best Intel chips were binned and better than Zen. So that's just true. The best things Intel could make. So there was really nothing fundamental that changed, except now you can get more cores for cheaper. Zen Plus was better, but the same situation, really, right? Intel could make better chips. And there was nothing you could do in servers with these EPYC chips that had 32 cores that you couldn't do already with 28 cores. It was better, way more efficient, but nothing had changed enough. Zen 2 changes that a little bit for servers. Now we have 64 cores at the same power usage levels. But again, doubling performance isn't as much as you would think it is. If you listen to Broken Silicon 8, that server engineer says, what did he say? He wants 4 or 10x performance, Zen 3 should double performance in a lot of applications over Zen 2 again, if not more. And this is when we're going to start seeing a seismic shift in what you're capable of doing. This is when you're going to have mobile processors that might have, 6 cores, 18 threads while using 15 watts instead of quad cores. That will change fundamentally what you can do with a laptop. That will change fundamentally what a desktop can do. That will change the type of processing you can do with a server. Zen 3 is that tipping point where it's like, oh, it doubled again. Now there's new things we can even do. And in fact, the stuff they're working on for AVX and SMT4, I do believe is going to be gigantic. So there's going to be, and the way they're going to make APUs that they're clearly working on for server that have low latency, you have just one socketed chip that has built an RDNA or Vega and a Zen 3 processor. The amount of less space you'll be able to take up while using less energy, like that, yes. At a certain point, if you keep doubling things, then you go, oh, we can do entirely new things now. Kind of like game consoles, right? The PS4 had more RAM, so now you can make every game open world. Much to my chagrin, by the way. I don't want all my games to be open world, and that's basically all it did. But I feel like the next Xbox, the next PlayStation, is actually going to up performance enough that we will get new types of gaming again, because the storage will be so much faster. Because the processor in the PS4 actually was arguably weaker than the PS3's. Not anymore. This is going to be a seismic shift in storage performance and processing power, and the graphics card should be 4 to 8 times better. We're going to get new games in a few years that we couldn't even make before, and I'm very excited. That's where Silicon's going. The PS4 and Xbox One X were kind of this waiting period where we could just make every game better. But there's really no game on the PS4 you couldn't have made on the PS3. Even with the RAM, you just would have had to make it look like junk. And now we're going to make entirely new things. So I hope that answers your question. So let's see. I have a question about networking, which I'm not an expert on. So I don't want to get into too much of this, Rob Geltrap. But my thoughts on switching to new types of communication for wireless networking. Well, eventually we might get to the point where everything, I don't know how to put this right without putting my foot in my mouth because I'm not an expert on this, but eventually, if everything could communicate with near zero latency wirelessly, that kind of changes what you can do in your house, right? First of all, gaming will be better with Wi-Fi. But the types of things you could control remotely might change. So I think that's the way I would think of the changes in networking. But I would need to do more research, but I'll leave it at that for now so I don't put my foot in my mouth. And let's see. Okay, and so the last thing actually is from an anonymous person. He says, one last thing unrelated to Intel, that AMD SEV technology for shared tendency environments, the genesis of that technology actually came from AMD's work on consoles, where Microsoft and Sony wanted a way to secure software on untrusted hardware to reduce the risk of privacy. He sent this information to me because, well, this is that server engineer who always makes fun of gamers. But he says, we can say for once the entire world should thank gamers for helping us secure AMD. He says, because the work on consoles actually made Epic more secure. So, just thought I'd throw that out there. I thought that was an interesting tidbit. Yeah, so that's the end of the reader mail. Let me ask, someone tip me here. Let me answer this now so I don't forget. Just found your channel and it woke me up from getting ripped off, getting a R5 3657 SRT. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I recommend a lot of used cards. And if you're a budget gamer, I do heavily recommend Zen 1. I do. And I know the new podcast, Paul will tell me that I should get Zen 2 because I care about latency, which I probably will. But yeah, I mean, you shouldn't be afraid of used Vega cards, and you really shouldn't be afraid, or Polaris cards. They're like $80, and you really shouldn't be afraid of Zen 1. You can build a system with a $90 Zen 6 core and an $80 Polaris card that goes almost toe to toe with like the PS4 Pro, and you can build that whole system for probably $300 now. Yeah, I mean, if you're on a budget, there's a reason to buy used. So I'm glad I could help. And let me see. I believe, was there another question? There was. Samsonite Dove. According to DigiTimes, TSMC will start 5 nanometer mass production, probably starting with low power variants, no later than March 2020. So in 6 months. Yeah, I know. That's something people got to understand. The things that they needed to solve to get to 16 nanometer apply to getting to 10 and 7 nanometer. And the things to get to 7 apply to 5 and 3. And they figured out the paradigm shift of how they need to think about upgrading. So the 6 nanometer is ramping up now. EUV is ramping up now. It's ramping up now, people. We're going to get EUV stuff next year, which is 20% higher density or more for their higher performance 6 nanometer. Again, it's a branded thing, but 6 nanometer variants. And that's going to be like a half node shrink next year. And by late 2020, so I agree. There may be some mobile chips on 5 nanometer late next year. And by 2021, we're on 5 nanometer. So 6 next year and 5 nanometer 2021. What a time to be alive. I didn't really have a question, but I do want to point that out, that anyone doubting that these things are slowing down, they're just not. AMD is not sitting still. So another thing from this month, 2 more things before I get into raw Q&A. I have an update for Navi 12 if you guys want to hear about it. I was sent some information from someone else that I trust very seriously, more than I trust any other source. Can't say who it is, but he said that my Navi 12 info was almost entirely correct, just so you guys know. So I don't know what that means, because that means some of it's a little wrong. But I think I made that clear. If you watch my Navi 12 video, which for the love of God, guys, this was a Zen 3 level leak that I just dropped. Please watch it. Apparently, the memory things are a little different, though. I'm still not sure about 256-bit. Multiple people said 256-bit for the 5800 XT, and it certainly could provide enough bandwidth, right? If they use 25% faster GDR6 chips, that's enough bandwidth for 30% more die space. That's fine. And they could make something that takes on the 2080 Ti, and having 8 gigabytes of RAM would allow them to probably price it at $500. So maybe they will. Maybe they will go with 8 gigabytes so they can make a 2080 Ti fighter for like $600, which would be awesome. But I still gotta say, I think 12 gigabytes is where they should go. And I know that they are using HBM on some of these. So I don't know if there's going to be 2 versions of Navi 12, and that's why some of them will have HBM and some of them won't. But it will use HBM as well. However, I've been told HBM is for the professional cards. I would guess they're going to have some high-end variant, though, for consumers that uses HBM. But apparently the HBM versions of Navi 12 are so they can make these cards, put GDR6 on them for gamers, and then put HBM on them for professional users. Either way, I love my Radeon 7, so I'm going to be sitting pretty with that for a while because of its incredible rendering performance. And yeah, I guess I'm not sure. Just remember, I'm not sure exactly how many compute units it will get up to. I'm confident they're going to get up to 70 because I was told that's correct, but I don't know that it will get to 80. I just feel like 80 compute units is the one to shoot for, personally. I think so, but maybe only for professional. Just remember what I said at the end of the Navi 12 leak. I said I confirm a few things specifically. I'm sure it's launching some big version this year. I'm sure it doesn't have ray tracing yet. I'm sure it will use GDR6, and it sounds like it will probably use 256-bit for at least the weaker ones. And I'm sure that some versions will use HBM, and it will be at least above 64 compute units. That's what I'm confirming. Don't, and some people in the WCCF comments try to troll me. They'll show this chart I made, which is, yeah, some speculation. That chart also could be correct, and I was sent specific numbers. But they can change that. Remember, the RTX 2070 was rumored to have 7 gigabytes of RAM by Adored at first. I'm sure NVIDIA was considering that, but they changed their mind. So what I showed in that chart is subject to change, people. It is subject to change. Just please keep that in mind. What I confirmed, again, one more time, Navi 12. This year, no ray tracing. Well, no dedicated ray tracing hardware besides its compute. Versions that use GDR6, versions that use HBM, and they're acting like it's going to crush the 2080 Ti. So they seem pretty confident, even if it has 8 gigabytes, that the 2080 Ti is on borrowed time. So we'll see. I think it's going to be pretty awesome. And the reason that they might use 256-bit is I wouldn't be surprised if they had a version they gave 16 gigabytes of RAM. Right? Again, 256-bit, if they use 2 gigabit per second or even 1.8 gigabit per second is, right? What would that be? Let me pull out the calculator quick, just so I'm sure I know what I'm talking about, right? If I pull this out, right, 1.8 divided by 1.4, that's 29% more bandwidth. That's probably enough. That's probably enough. And we know 2.2 gigabit per second chips are out right now. So again, 2.2 divided by 1.4, which I believe is rumored that's what the PlayStation 5 is going to use in the Xbox. That's 42% more bandwidth still over 256-bit. And what they could do is just give a 16 gigabyte version. 256-bit may be enough. We'll see. All right. One more thing now that I've wrapped up the Navi 12 info. A small summarizing theme. I want to talk about prioritizing where you spend your money. Right? Just briefly. Because I think there's some people who act like I just blow my money. That Paul kind of acted like that, but I'm using a 6700K, right? I don't just blow my money, guys. That TV back there, which is probably going to look like crap on this cheaper camera. Oh yeah, that doesn't look good. That TV there is the first nice TV I've ever owned. The previous one was $500, but I have a YouTube channel now. I want to be able to test the best HDR. So I have that TV to do that. Getting a stronger processor really wouldn't have helped me. It wouldn't have. It's not holding me back yet. Getting a 2080 Ti instead of a new camera wouldn't make any sense. You know, I've got a camera here that will last for like 20 years. It's capable of recording for 30 seconds to a minute at 960 hertz in 1080p. It's capable of 4K HDR, and I mean real HDR at night. You can film the night sky with this camera. I'm still coming to grips with it. The word I would use for this camera is intimidating because it's going to take a while for me to get used to it. But I could have gotten this camera, or I could have gotten a 2080 Ti. And my question for you is, what would that 2080 Ti have gotten me? Nothing, really. You know, 30% more performance than a Radeon 7. Probably not even that much better rendering. Less RAM. It's about priorities. And that's just something I want to put out there. A lot of people are asking me right now, what processors should I get? You know, should I get the 3600, the 3900X, which apparently everyone's bought the 3900X, so can't get it now anyways. Or the 3950X or Threadripper. Are you going to use the cores? Most people should just get the 3600, right? If you're doing some multitasking, maybe you should get the 2700X for like 50 less bucks if you can. And if you're doing a lot of multitasking, 8 cores is perfect right now. And 12 cores is overkill. But only if you're doing professional work, right? If you're not, you don't need it. Now, you might want to spoil yourself, but I spoil myself with that TV. And I'm a cinephile. I watch a lot of movies in 4K HDR. And that TV got me a lot more enjoyment a 2080 Ti would. So I don't blow money, people. I'm still using a 6700K. And I've been rethinking what I'm going to get. We'll see how much Threadripper costs. I don't know. Maybe the 3900 non-X, actually. That actually, if that's a good price for 400 bucks or something, $450 bucks. Yeah, I'll get a 3900 non-X because it has 12 cores and I know it will run 144 hertz fine. It's just about priorities. Make sure you're prioritizing stuff you'll actually gain from, right? Actually gain from. Okay, that's one thing I wanted to say. And of course, before I get into Q&A, which will come up right about now, massive changes to the channel. Broken Silicon is now weekly. It goes news podcast, interview, news podcast, interview. Not an Apple fans coming up. Then I'll have another one with Dan. And then I'm lining up people like Cortex and other channels to interview and talk with in between them. And so Broken Silicon is there, and it's about bandwidth. I can do a Broken Silicon every week. I can't promise you I can do a high quality Navi 12 video every week, right? Promising to do 3 videos a week is like, well, I don't want them to be low quality. And then I'm also doing die shrink. Me and Dan just recorded another die shrink, 2 more actually, one about Moore's Law and genetics and one about VR, the future of VR. We also did one about, are we living in a simulation? So if you support me with just $2 a month, you'll get access to die shrink every Friday. So, or at least every other Friday. So I'm pumping that stuff out, you know? Yeah, someone here, the Darth Tuck says you shouldn't have to justify your purchases, but your priorities. That's a very good way of putting it. That is my point. You don't need to justify your purchases. You need to say, this camera I just got, will this do things? Yes. It'll do so many things for my channel over the next 10 years. Would a 30% stronger graphics card change any of the games I play? No, most of the games probably won't even use the extra performance. It's about priorities. And yeah, and I want to make it clear, I've got more audio equipment. I will be looking into upgrading my system to do better emulation. Not emulation, rendering and stuff like that. Not emulation. The Patreon dollars are being reinvested as much as I can. So let's just keep that in mind. Okay, so I think that's pretty much, everything there. Yeah, let's crack open a beer. Well, first I need a drink of water after talking for so much. Let's crack open a beer. And this one was actually sent by a Patreon supporter in Maryland, Lord Baltimore Craft Brewery there. He says he wants to prove Maryland has good breweries. So, yeah, you said, I want to say this. A guy who sent them. I usually hate sour beers, but Solar Power Sour, I drank all 4 of them last night. That's the first sour beer I've liked. Solar Power Sour is really good. I'll say that. All right, I'm pouring that beer. So yeah, if you tip me, I'll definitely answer your question. Otherwise, I will answer what I feel like. I'm not going to go for 3 hours like last time, guys. I recorded 2 podcasts today, and I was up basically all last night making that Navi 12 leak to make sure I got the info out as soon as possible. So I'm a little tired. And also, there's problems with the rendering if I go over 2 hours. So this will probably be like an hour, 20 minutes. And I think that's better. Then I can afford to put like timestamps in probably too. All right, let me make sure I didn't miss any other questions as well, by the way. And yeah, you can ask me questions about just about everything. I would prefer it's about technology, but Santa Fizzy says Dan is my source. No, Dan's not really my source for any of this. He's my source for genetics info. Let's see. Is there a chance to get a 4700G with 8, 16, and 20 Navi cores? You know, I really think AMD is going to keep using 12 nanometer for their APUs as long as they can because of it's not about capacity problems. It's about how much money they're making off of Zen 2 chiplets, as Adored covered. And it's about allocation. The problem is, I think AMD underestimated how many people in the consumer space would want 6 cores and how many people in the professional space would want 8-core chiplet units. TSMC, as far as I'm told, by the way, guys, isn't having capacity problems. The problem is just that they can't get enough of the 8 cores for professional and 6 cores for consumer. That's why 24-core Threadripper is coming. That's why they're delaying the 3950X. And I do think the 3950X is probably going to be like I don't know, probably a, what is it? What do I want to say? A paper launch product, you know? So much like Ice Lake. But so, yeah, I don't know. And I'm gonna upgrade by Christmas because that's when I'll have time off. So we'll see if I get Threadripper or I might just get a 3900 non-X. Just be happy with that. All right, let's see. Not really seeing any questions for me here. I like this one. Eduardo Saralvo Gill asks, why don't we get any info about Ampere? You know, there's a lot of theories. There's some people I've talked to that think it's because NVIDIA is just saving it. But I think it's because Samsung's 7 nanometer EUV isn't quite up to snuff, right? And I think Ampere is coming, and it's probably mostly design complete. They just need to get 7 nanometer EUV working on Samsung because they have to use it. It has an 858 millimeter squared reticle limit, which NVIDIA needs giant die sizes. And they're not using TSMC. AMD's bought up TSMC right now, so that's what's going on. And in fact, as Adored points out, they're going to need to make consoles at TSMC too. So, my God. So, NVIDIA ain't using TSMC, guys. And they need to wait for Samsung to be ready. I think that's why Ampere is kind of delayed. I think, right? Not sure. Any ideas? That's kind of a good question. The ninth dude asks, any ideas as to why AMD isn't salvaging chiplets such as 4 2-core yields to meet demand? Well, so there's two reasons. My Radeon 7 has 60 compute units. That's barely cut down. Right now, they managed to sell RX 5700s, which are cut down by like 11%. It's not very cut down at all. Usually you go down to 25%. So what that tells me is there's some reason you don't want to, it's not worth it to cut down TSMC's 7 nanometer as much. Maybe the defects are not big and spread out, and so you don't need to disable much of the die. Perhaps it's because of how expensive the wafers are. There's no point in selling a cut down unit. You might as well just throw it away. Could be a little bit of it. You know, I don't know. I think their yields are good. I don't think they have 2-core yields. If they did, maybe they would use them. But I think there will be 4-core yields, and I think they might be just stockpiling every quad-core yield for PlayStation early and Xbox. Maybe that's what they're doing. but I'm not entirely sure. But at least can give you some ideas as per why they're probably doing that. Yeah, actually, it'll make a lot of sense if they were literally already stockpiling every quad core yield for the PlayStation 5 early to try to avoid capacity problems as much as possible. That would actually make a lot of sense to me. Did you know melanin makes animals more aggressive? No, I didn't. That probably explains why sometimes I swear too much. Because I'm pretty tan. Even though it might not come through on this camera. I still look kind of tan. Will Ryzen 3 for Zen 2 ever exist? I don't know, actually. I don't know if there's a point. I don't know if there is a point in making Zen 2 Ryzen 3. Because there's a floor. More powerful chips can be made cheaper with chiplets, but it costs money to combine chiplets together. And I've heard the floor is $100, and AMD isn't having a problem selling their high performance versions. So I think they might just keep making Ryzen 3s on Zen Plus or some hybrid Zen Plus architecture on 12 nanometer. And again, I know AMD is working on a Jaguar successor that should be a lot more powerful than what Jaguar was. If they are, they should use Global Foundries 12 nanometer FDX, right? I think there's a drinking game every time I mention Bitcoin or 12 nanometer FDX at Global Foundries. You take a drink because I seem to mention it every single video and podcast I do. I've noticed. But that's what I think they'll use. I think they'll use a hybrid Zen Plus Zen 2 design built for 12 nanometer non-FinFET. And I think it'll be almost as efficient as Zen 2, except it'll be monolithic up to 6 cores and it'll be an APU. I think that's what's coming. In fact, they may be putting it in the Surface, working on a video about that. Just want to confirm a couple things. Yeah, this beer's pretty good, Lebo. Lord Baltimore. It's a little hoppy for what I usually like, but it's just hoppy enough that I actually kind of like it. My friend played that drinking game and he died. Yeah. How do we send you beer? I need to get a BO box. Here's what I allowed one of my bigger supporters to just send me it, right? Because I kind of trust that he's not going to try to murder me. I mean, I guess you can try to murder me. Go for it. I'll get a PO box eventually, but there needs to be demand, right? It costs money. It costs money to get a PO box. It costs money to host my podcast. It costs money. And I'm trying to use some of that money to pay off my house so that I don't need a day job and so that I can make high quality videos with a 4K camera every week, right? That's my goal. But I will get a P.O. box, and I would like that to be a running gag as people send me beer for the loose ends. I would like that. Oh, I bet Colorado beer is really good, by the way. Yeah, I'll figure it out. I just need a few people telling me they're going to actually send it, you know? All right, let's see what else there is. But I'll work with you tonight, dude. Just throw a Radeon 7 at him. Well, guys, I was on the rifle team in college. So yeah, I mean, I can do 1-inch groupings at 300 yards. And I actually became a mechanical engineer to design guns. I'll admit that to you guys. So yeah, I'm not as weak as you guys might think. Not that I'm bragging, or this is the beer talking, guys. Everyone gets braggadocious when they drink beer. But, you know, I guess I'll let you guys know that I watch Forgotten Weapons, CN Arsenal. I could talk about that stuff forever, too. If Intel starts producing beer, how many children do I have to sell to afford a can? Well, they're going to be almost free pretty soon. Intel's going to be a budget company. It's getting a little dark in here. Will Global Foundries go below 7 nanometer? Yeah. I think I might agree with Jim that it was a mistake to not go to it, as long as they actually could. I think they're going to go to 7 nanometer. They just need to make some more money. They were having problems, right? Damn, we out here. Ha ha. Call me an Uber. Right? Damn, we out here. That was a reference, right? To your mom's house. Someone there. I'd love to have an AN94 or AS Val. I couldn't agree more. AN94 is my favorite gun. I'll let you guys know that. AN94. And the VSS is like number 6, 7 on my list. Yeah. Actual mediocre gamer tips. No question. Just want to say, hey, well, if you have a question, ask it. If you tip me, I'll answer even a small question. You don't want it. You're right. You don't want to clean an AN94. Luckily, you don't have to often because it's reliable. I've held an M14 EBR. Oh no! Now all the people who use guns are popping up. Do I play team-based shooters? Yeah, I play the living shit out of Battlefield. The first big shooter I played online, well, actually, it was Medal of Honor Heroes for some reason, right? But I got a tip, so I'll get to that in a second. But also, I mean, you know, SOCOM. I was a huge SOCOM player. I had a clan of like 100 people. Huge SOCOM player. Killzone as well. Killzone, we had a clan of about 100 people. We competed in tournaments. Killzone 2. And then MAG. We had a website. There's a website that's still up for my MAG clan. We had a huge clan. Sever represent. We'd really kick the shit out of those Raven people. Yeah, no, I play team shooters a lot. Right now, it's Battlefield, basically. Battlefield's the one that still exists, right? SOCOM's gone. MAG didn't pan out for them. So it's basically SOCOM now. I mean, I'm sorry, not SOCOM. Battlefield. All right, Paulo writes in and asks, thank you for the tip, Paulo. I'll answer your question. Do you have a video about where the profits from each silicon come from? Laptops, desktop servers. It may show us where their priorities are. That's a good idea, actually. Well, you can just look at their financial statements. They usually try to obfuscate them as much as they can because they don't want you to know where their profits are coming from so they don't look stupid. Like NVIDIA, it's all gaming. Guys, it's all gaming. It's all gaming. If NVIDIA loses 20% market share, if Radeon even got to 50% market share, NVIDIA's stock price would probably be cut in half. And I hope that means NVIDIA will make a Ampere really cool and stuff, you know. But yeah, so that's NVIDIA. AMD, it's pretty soon going to be all server. Intel, it's mobile. It's mobile, man. That's their priorities. But that's an interesting idea for a video. Yeah, I like that. I'll write that down in my database here for next videos to do. Yeah. 140. Can you believe I've made almost 150 videos now? I think I have made 150 videos. If you count the podcasts and loose ends, I'm over 150. It's ridiculous if you ask me. Yeah, I like that idea for a video. Thank you. Waiting to see a Mini 5700 XT. Yeah. I'm sure there will be Mini 5600 XTs. And based on the information I was sent, the 5600 XT will be a Vega 56 that uses 120 watts. And it'll be like 250. This is the card you guys are waiting for. There'll probably be a 4 gigabyte version that is like $200. If you game in 1080p, 5600 XT is going to be awesome. SOCOM for life. Yeah, I mean, I was a big Convoy clan in SOCOM 3. Man, I miss Convoy so much. Too bad Florida increased the legal age to own a gun at 21. I honestly don't mind that type of stuff. I think you should be able to own a 22. that's not semi-auto at 18. But look, guys, I'm going to be honest. I'll say it. I don't have a problem with you needing to be an adult to own a gun. I think that's kind of common sense. You'd be surprised. My opinions on guns are very nuanced. I like this. Kapora asks, when exactly do you think Zen 3 will come to us consumers? And is it worth waiting for it to upgrade? I currently own you own an Ivy Bridge 3770K. It's about priorities. Are any of your games bogging down yet? All of my games run above 100 hertz. Now, people who say the security patches don't matter to gamers are so wrong. I saw a benchmark recently where with the 9900K in some games, as long as you're using security patches, 30% performance reduction in like Total War. No, it matters. These security patches are killing Intel, guys. I'm telling you, they're killing Intel. And as such, eventually you're going to have to upgrade. Sorry. Like you're just going to have to. But you might be able to wait for Zen 3. I think Zen 3 will come to consumers it might not be till 2021 though. I'll say that, or late 2020. Yeah, I don't know. I think Zen 3, they're going to use that as a way to offload capacity, right? Yeah, I don't know. I think the question you got to ask yourself, I'm getting off subject. Are your games not running maxed out frame rate? It depends. If you're playing a lot of single player games, your i7 is probably still golden. But I play Battlefield 5 and it will become an issue. I'll tell you this much. I'm certainly upgrading before Battlefield 6 because the multiplayer will crush my CPU. That's definitely true. All right. I think I answered that question. It's about priorities. But like I say, things aren't slowing down. There's always going to be something new. You want to wait for Zen 3? Might as well wait for Zen 4, right? You know. We need more VRAM. You know, I think 4 gigabytes is going to be enough for 1080p for the next 5 years. You know, I just do. Eventually, it'll become somewhat of an issue and you'll have to turn down settings. But here's the thing. 4 years from now, low texture settings with 4 gigabytes of VRAM will still look fine. So 4 gigabytes is for 1080p. Anything above that, though, and you got to be an idiot, honestly. Like 8 gigabytes is the new standard. 6 gigabytes is not going to cut it. 8 gigabytes, even for 1440p. Because once you get to 1440p, you can see the extra detail. So you'll want to turn up the textures. You know, and 2 gigabytes should be good for 720p for a little while longer, I would say, too, by the way. So 8 gigabytes for almost everything, even 4K, you'll be able to turn down some settings. Now, if you really want to max out stuff, I think we're still not going to have every game requiring 12 gigabytes for another year. But, you know, the PlayStation 5 supposedly has 24 gigabytes of RAM, 4 gigabytes for background tasks. And so what does that mean? Well, that means for the engine, they'll probably use 10 gigabytes. And then for the textures, like 8 to 10, you know, and it'll depend. There'll be some games that are linear and they use a 12 gigabyte buffer or maybe even a 16 gigabyte VRAM buffer and then only 4 gigabytes of system memory. And then there'll be some games where they use, 12 gigabytes for the system, so that's what you got to think about. You want 16 gigabytes of RAM in your desktop and you want 8 gigabytes in your graphics card. And if you bought a 480, you still got 8 gigabytes. Like you're future proof for gaming in 1080p forever. That's the stuff to think about. But I do think the awkward amounts of RAM, like 6 gigabytes, are just not going to cut it, unless you plan on gaming in 720p. I'm not seeing a lot of tips here. Yeah, I might cut this to an hour. Oh, wait. Speak of the devil. Let me see. NVIDIA has an infinite resolution patent. Yeah, I don't know if I have time to read this. It's interesting though. I'm reading this article and it says today most games use textures that are created for a fairly standard set of resolutions, which is true, right? That's interesting. Like 720p, 1080, 1444K. These textures cover just about every surface in the modern game. Yeah, it says here NVIDIA would make a SDK where the game comes with one static texture and then downsize it for resolutions and just depending on how much VRAM you have, it will look better. I mean, yeah, that's the future. I'm actually surprised that's not how things work. Thank you for that tip there, Nano Horizon. Yeah, it's not just a fantastic idea, it's an overdue one. Good job, NVIDIA. I think that's something that we should have done a long time ago. The problem is you have to find a way to do it where you can downsize the textures at a faster rate, or I'm sorry, at a more efficient way than just loading different options. Because the fact is the amount of processing power to just choose a set you load is very little. So you would have to make there be almost no performance hit. But if they can do that, which if you have an ASIC for doing this in graphics cards in the future, then yeah, that's the future. Eventually, this is probably the standard. I think it might be about 5 years ahead of its time, though, to be honest. But I think that's the future. Thank you for that tip. So Jerry Watson writes in and he asks, what are Vega 6456 owners to do? Keep it or sell it? It's about priorities. What do you use your card for? Is it actually slowing you down? What resolution are you playing at? Do you actually care if you boot up a game and set things to medium and it looks 20% worse? Do you actually care? Well, maybe not. I think Vega 56 and 64 have a good few years ahead of them. You know, the PS5 will be about twice as strong. But if you're not planning to game in 4K, I think Vega 56 and 64 are fine. I think they're fine. And they have a high bandwidth cache, so that's good too. I think you're kind of set. But it depends, because I think right now you can still kind of sell them for $250 on eBay. You know, if you think you can use the extra performance, I say, Navi is not a bad deal. But I don't know. It's up to you. I know my brother Dan will be using his Vega 56 for a very long time. Don't be afraid to keep a long-lasting card that has forward-thinking technologies like HBM and high bandwidth cache for a while, like Vega does. It's still good, and it's still going to continue to be good. But it's not going to be a 4K gaming card in a year. That's all I'll say. Hope that answers your question, right? M2 definitely worth it. Yeah, I mean NVMe, M.2, that type of stuff. The super fast SSDs. I think all PCs should be built with them from now on. In fact, what I'll say is two things. They're not expensive. They're super cheap. It's like $100 for a terabyte of an SSD that's like 4 or 5 times as fast as a normal SATA drive. Dude, totally worth the money. Get an NVMe, guys. Additionally, the next gen consoles are both using NVMe, so that's going to be the standard. My understanding is Sony may do something ridiculous with it. They may get 4 gigabytes per second SSDs. That can fundamentally change how you even load a game. They could almost use that as a RAM buffer. So that's something you got to think about is, are you future-proofing your PC for that? It's not expensive anymore. Yeah, there's no reason to cheap out, right? I've even heard they may not, and I've said this before, I've even heard that GTA 6 may be a PlayStation temporary exclusive just because they're worried desktops won't run it. It's something to think about. I'm not saying this as a fanboy. I'm just telling you what I've been told. All right, let's see. I got a new tip. I believe there it is. I like this already, Preston. I'm replacing my Sandy Bridge 2600K with Ryzen 3700X with a used RX 580. Yeah, that's a good. Okay. I'm waiting for Big Navi. I see dropping high refresh monitor. Yeah. So there's a few things I think you're asking there. You didn't put a question mark, but what you're basically saying is, did I do a good thing? I mean, yeah, you got the 3700X is a solid choice. The 580 is best price performance still. I'm waiting for Big Navi. You know, it's interesting. I'm now thinking about this. If some version of Big Navi, even if it was just the 5800 non-XT, if that had 8 gigabytes of VRAM, yeah, I mean, I don't know. They really could sell that for like $500. That would be an insane price performance dominator. So that might be worth waiting for. In terms of resolutions, I recommend 4K and 1080p, and that's a hill I kind of am willing to die on. I actually have a 1440p monitor I don't use anymore because it uses DVI and nothing supports DVI, and also it was kind of cheap. I feel like you kind of want to get 4K because next gen consoles are going to support that. Now, let's say you don't buy any consoles, you don't care, and I believe Xbox supports 1440p now too, so that's cool. I think 4K is the standard. You want 4K or 1080p. And again, it's up to you guys, right? But the way I look at it is this: either you want high refresh rate, or you want 4K, or you want to pay a ton of money for both. If you want high refresh rate, go with 1080p. Make sure you can run every game at 144 hertz because I can. I can run I'm still using a 1080p monitor. It's because I can run every game at 144 hertz, and that's what I've decided I care about. Well, what if you want 4K HDR? I don't think 1440p, like the cost of a 1440p monitor and a 4K monitor are almost the same. So if you're going 60 hertz, 4K for sure. That's the new standard. Netflix 4K, YouTube 4K, my channel eventually 4K. Next gen consoles will use 4K. 4K, 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 because it's a standard. Or 1080p because that's the other big standard. Now that's how I look at it. Now, if you want something higher than 1080p and you want a high refresh rate, I get that 1440p is a good in between. Look for Chinese monitors online, though. There are some 20-inch 1800p 120 hertz monitors you may want to look into for a few $100s. I don't know how big your desk is, but that's a hot tip for all of you. You might want 1800p if you're not worried about standards. And I believe they can do virtual 4K so that if you have a next-gen console, you'll still be able to run it 4K downsampled to 1800p. That's what I recommend. And I like 1800p, by the way. It's 4 times 900p. I think that's actually a good standard, a good in between. I just don't think 1440p. It's only 70% higher than 1080p. I would rather have double the frame rate. You know, I that's just my opinion, though. Yeah, that's my advice. That's my opinion. If it's super cheap, again, I'm going to probably recommend Korean and Chinese monitors for the 165 hertz 1440p, but it's still like, dude, cards can't run that. I don't know. Big Navi will be able to run that fine, I guess. So yeah, there's my advice. I talked for a while. Let's see what we got here. Dog steak fun. Thank you, Frederick. Where? Reese. I'll let the dog show up since you tipped me mentioning the dog. Up, up. Up, up. There she is. Yeah. All right. I do actually tend to buy bones when I get tips for the dog. If someone says the tips for the dog, I tend to buy her an extra bone at the grocery store. So thank you for the tip. Kilojolt says, I thought 4K would have been the standard over 1080p a few years ago. Yeah, me too, dude. I mean, what can I say? Borderlands 3 runs 1800p HDR on my PS4 Pro. That's where I gamed that one on. Xbox One X runs, I think, a decent amount of its games at 4K, full 4K. I don't know what to tell you. There's two problems going on here. The stagnation of gaming PCs means that you don't have 4K as a major. There's no giant push. You don't have people clawing at their face and at AIBs going, why aren't you making 4K 120 hertz monitors? And so it's a this or that thing, right? So people are choosing 1080p and 1440p. But it's also because NVIDIA's kind of just held back performance. And I don't know what else to tell you. They've held back HDR performance. I can get a TV that has better HDR than a monitor that costs twice as much. That's insanely ridiculous. It should never be like that. The monitor should be cheaper. And you just have this stagnation combined with the fact that, just the stagnation of monitors and graphics cards at the same time. And I think 4K is going to be the standard in 2 years, under 2 years. It's unfortunately, and this is something I talked about with the good old gamer. I'm worried PC is holding console back by now. And I know how mad people will get when I say that, but I don't know what to tell you guys. It looks pretty grim. And when I see the PS5 Pro is going to target 4K 60 HDR with support for 120 hertz in some games, yeah, it looks like it'll be as strong as a 2080 Ti as well. So I don't know. I'm really worried with the prices going on right now in the PC space that we're looking at a stagnation coming from desktop. And it will get over it. There will be a course correction. So Crook Tuna asks, thoughts on CRT? I actually don't have a big thing to say about CRT. I could dig into it if I want to. I know some people still use it for its low latency purposes, but OLED is going to be the standard. I know I'm the OLED channel, but I don't know what to tell you. You're not going to get lower latency than that. So that's going to be the standard. Nano Horizon writes in, thank you for the tip again. I'm okay with 16:9, but damn, I wish 21:9 was the standard. Yeah, I agree. I would like a 21:9 stretched touchscreen monitor, kind of like a Minority Report, where you just, can touch screen different parts of it. Like, that would be great. But I don't know, right? It's just not the standard, and that's why I recommend 4K and 1080p. It's real politic. It's real talk. Let's be honest. Do you want to use something that might not work in 21:9? Do you want to use something that won't run 1440p, only has 4K and 1080p options? Because there are things like that. And if you have the money, if you have a specific application and 1440p or 21:9 works, there's plenty of games now that work with 21:9, then, good for you. And I mean that. But I am not willing to blow $500 to $1,000 on something that not all of my stuff can work. And I use my desktop for so many different things. I use my monitors for consoles and PCs. And it's just, I'm not willing to blow a bunch of money if it's not going to be usable for everything. And you might be. And you might have a specific task where that works. But that's why it's not that I don't support 21:9 or these other resolutions. It's that I just don't want to pay a bunch of money and not get my everything I could out of it. All right, let me see here. Here I have one here. Mountain Delicious says, as a person who owns a PS4, I have to say the consoles require an upgrade. Well, the base Xbox One is probably just going to straight up not get cross-gen games, honestly. It's just not powerful enough. It has the equivalent of an HD 7770, which is a 250X, which is weaker than a GT10. It's just so weak, guys. So that's probably not getting next-gen games. The PS4 has 8 gigabytes of GDR5 and a 7-core processor. Remember, 1 core is disabled. And a backup ARM processor. You know, the PS4 base can probably run 720p games for a while longer, but the processor is going to be a huge bottleneck. Eventually, it's just not going to cut it when Zen 2 is the standard. And the PS4 Pro and Xbox One X will probably have a little more life in them, but I don't know. The PS4 Pro runs pretty well, in my opinion. So does the Xbox One X. So, but you know, you say they need an upgrade. I don't know. You know, here's the thing. What I would say: the PS4 base was promised to you as a 1080p Ultra, 30 frames per second console. It's still basically what it is, and that's not going to change. PS4 Pro runs 1440p. It's doing it. Xbox One X runs better than 1440p and still doing it. The processor is going to be what kills them. For now, I don't know. You know, PC prices are so out of whack. Ugh. Nope, I got 2 tips. How do fabs get ready to do EUV lithography and mass production? Well, I'm not an expert on that. My understanding is EUV uses a lot of energy, so they need to prepare themselves to have the right hookup so that they don't burn out, right? So there's that. And then it's just, you know, that's the problem with EUV is they need to make sure it works perfectly before they use it, because they're going to switch. When you switch a fab over to a new production type, you aren't using it for the old production type. And that was a problem Intel ran into, where they, I guess, convinced themselves they were going to get 10 nanometer working, and then they didn't. And so they're actually detooling some of their 10 nanometer fabs to back into 14 nanometer. And that's just a mess. So that's, I guess I don't have a ton of details, but I'll tell you those are the things that I know of that you might want to think about. And EUV is a bit different. So, you know, when they switch over, they better be sure it works. NVIDIA RTX and the reviewers asking why no 4K. Preston Morton, not sure I know what you mean by that. I think you're talking about using 4K with RTX. Yeah, I don't know. It's just a joke. RTX is hilariously bad in my opinion. I don't have that much to say. Yeah, I don't. Listen to the Cortex podcast, the 2 Cortex broken silicons. We really get into that, and it's just, he's like, well, why do you think someone would do that? I mean, there's backroom deals going on, guys. There is. And I have proof. There's proof. There's proof out there. There's backroom deals. Jonathan Rosalia asks, how do you think AMD's 4-thread per core will scale? Well, I think on server, the people I've talked to in the industry are very excited for 4 threads per core for server tasks. So I think it's going to scale fine. From someone I talked to, they said 3 threads per core. There's a decent chance that might work on Windows with the proper updates. So I think that's coming. I think 3 threads per core for at least Threadripper Zen 3 is going to be a thing. Some of them, but maybe not every model, right? Maybe not every model. I think there might be some more expensive 3-thread per core options that they have. And with a lot of applications, I think it will just work. I do. But it will be minor performance gains in games. And there'll be a lot of applications where it doesn't help. So I would not be surprised if they just did not have 3 threads per core in every model, even if they're all Zen 3. And I certainly don't think they'll be bringing 4 threads per core to everything. But, you know, weirder things have happened. Maybe they will. Maybe they'll just get 4 threads working. Nah, my screen brightness isn't that high. Oh, wait, it's OLED. It has terrible brightness, I thought, guys. Nah, the problem is I'm just using my cheaper camera because it works with YouTube. And frankly, my new high-end camera just doesn't seem too well. Oh, wow, that's a Crypto Twins reference. All kinds of gains. All kinds. You guys would be surprised how many references I get. That guy made a Crypto Twins reference. Actually blown away. Someone else here made that. Opinion on Halo Infinite. I haven't been interested in Halo since Halo 2, guys. Yeah, so am I interested in Death Stranding? Metal Gear Solid 4 might be my favorite game of all time. So the fact that it's made by Kojima is a big thing. But I gotta say, I'm gonna plug Sacred Symbols again. Guys, we gotta admit, Death Stranding just looks weird, doesn't it? Doesn't Death Stranding just look weird? I'm not sold on it necessarily. I honestly want to see reviews. I'm sure it will be interesting. I'm sure I'll get it eventually, but I love Kojima's games, but it looks weird. We'll see. Not seeing any tips or interesting stuff. Beer's almost up. I get frustrated when I play stealth games. Well, some of the older stealth games suck. I don't know if you like Metal Gear Solid, but Metal Gear Solid 5's AI was amazing. How often do I upgrade my phone? When it breaks, basically, every 3 years. I really don't upgrade it often. Will a 1070 be enough to play the Chrome Dinosaur game? I don't know what the Chrome Dinosaur game is. 1070, well, sure. Tip me enough. I'm 2 beers in. Do it again. All kinds of gains. Bitcoin gonna make all kinds of gains. All kinds. Look up the crypto twins. They kind of went ape shit with Ripple, so I don't recommend their advice, but they're pretty funny. All right, let me see there. Single player is dead. No, it's not. Yeah, okay, good. Yeah, no, I think we're gonna see a single player renaissance next gen. Honestly. I believe Gorilla's working on a new Killzone, a good one, hopefully. Horizon game, Spider-Man. I've been playing a lot of single player games. I've been playing Call of Duty Infinite Warfare, Sekiro. Still play Fallout 4. I don't know. There's a lot of good single player games, and I think people realize we don't want all multiplayer and we don't want all open world. Every now and then, it's just fun to run around with a shotgun in close quarters in a linear game. Thank you for the tip. Ilias Kilzaloglu. Hopefully I said your name right. Any whispers of prices of the cards? Well, remember what I was saying about Navi changed based on that leak I was sent and the people I talked to at AMD recently. So some of my speculation was wrong, which of course it was. It's speculation. What I would say is if they really have an 8 gigabyte version of a card that has 60 compute units, I think that's going to be $550 at most. And I think that could be in between a 2080 Super and a 2080 Ti. I think that's going to be an amazing 4K gaming card for a budget user. And then I wouldn't be surprised if if it was still 256-bit and they just gave it 16 gigabytes of RAM, and then that version's $700. So $700 for 16 gigabytes. For some reason, I think AMD is going to honor that rule. They charged $700 for the Radeon 7. I feel like they're going to hold that as a rule moving forward. If they make another 16 gigabyte card, it can be 700 or maybe 750. They might charge 750 for a 16 gigabyte 5800 XT if that's how much it has. But if they make a 12 gigabyte or 8 gigabyte card, I just don't think they're going to charge 700. I just really think they'll keep it under 600. So that's what I think you're looking at. And if you think about it, right, it should be 30% stronger. So yeah, 550 for a 5800. That is stronger than the 2080 Super by a little bit. And the 5800 XT with 16 gigabytes, hopefully, or even just 8 gigabytes for, if it has 8 gigabytes for, 650, 649 for something almost a 2080 Ti. And then a 16 gigabyte special edition, perhaps for 750. That's what I think they're going to do. I really do. I think they're going to charge more than they've charged before, but I think I don't think they're going RTX. The only way they would go full RTX 2080 Ti prices is if it actually crushed the Titan by 20%. And then maybe then they charge 1500. But it would probably be an insane rendering card too. So, but I don't think I'd get it. I like my Radeon 7. I'm not going to blow my money. I bought this camera. That's what I'm going to use. All right, I got a tip here. Where is... Oh, yeah, that was okay. That was that last tip. All right. Mr. Green Delta, do I think AMD will switch to RISC-V at some point? Yes. Everyone I talked to at Hot Chips informally, I mean, every single engineer said RISC-V is the biggest thing coming out now. So, yeah, I mean, they're going to have to. And Lisa Su, most people gloss over this. In the keynote, she was asked in the Q&A what she thinks about RISC-V, and she said, we're looking into all future things. It's not something we're doing necessarily right now, but, yeah, I think they're going to. And I think it would serve them well to have RISC-V and then offer the best RISC-V chips that you can use. That you can use with chiplets on demand. Like, I want this RISC-V chip. Maybe you want both, too. Like, they could have times 86 and RISC-Vs on the same. Yeah, I really do think RISC-V is going to come. Yeah, that'd be the only way Intel goes out of business is if they just don't use RISC-V, which, my God, that'd be so dumb. Yeah, and again, I'll just for those who didn't watch, I added on to my Navi 12 info earlier. If you joined late, let me add to it again. I'll remind you. I think the HBM version, and I'm told it is likely HBM2E, so that's awesome. 32 gigabyte HBM2E professional cards. I think Navi 12 might be able to use both both HBM and GDR6. And so they're going to put HBM on the professional versions of the cards. But I guarantee they launch one HBM consumer card. They just might charge, they might make a 32 gigabyte HBM2E card for $1,500. And so there's your Radeon 7 replacement. But also it will be better at rendering than anything you've ever seen before. So, it's pronounced RISC-V. I don't know. I calling it RISC-V. See what other questions we got. Well, my beer is up. Those are my 2 beers. I have been going for an hour and 18 minutes. Oh, there's a tip. So unless there's a beer tip soon, I'll go for another 20 minutes maybe. But similar to RISC-V, Ilyas Kiziloglu asks, what do you think of IBM Power for desktop, especially now with it being open source? A lot's going to change. I really got a sense that IBM is working on some interesting open source stuff at Hot Chips. Just to be honest, the specs I saw looked inferior to Intel and especially AMD. So right now, I don't see their huge resurgence. I just don't right now. I don't. But yeah, you can bet they'll be pushing RISC-V hard. Because it would only benefit them to move on with that. And I don't know. I think they will. They could have a resurgence, right? I just don't think it's going to be in the next few years. Snack Juice, why are you so broke, Tom? Not Not sure I'm broke, guys. I'm not some baron with 300,000 subscribers, but I'm certainly not broke. I think that's obvious. Oh, I said it was a slow month. Yeah, well, the month was not growing exponentially. This is like the first month where I haven't doubled subscribers in a month, which is a weird thing to complain about, right? You know, because I'm still growing faster than a lot of my counterparts. So it's like I'm doing well. But yeah, that question, yeah, it's been a slower month. You know, all I can say is I think I'm getting into the rhythm. You guys are going to get a new podcast every week. You're going to get a die shrink most weeks, and you're going to get a big video probably once. You're going to get at least a video a week, probably two. And I've said this a month ago, right? I say I want to move to like 1 to 2 videos a week. How many did I release this week? How many videos? Didn't I release like 5? Like I still keep releasing, in my opinion, too many videos. So it's just because I keep coming up with things to say. All right, timeline for Renoir APU. At 1080p ultra settings, 144 hertz, and a thin and light laptop with USB 4 side ports, next year. Now, as much as I say AMD is going to want to use 12 nanometer as long as they can, I do think that they will move to all 7 nanometer by the end of next year, with the exception of some specific units. I do think you're going to get these super APUs by the end of next year. I do. And I think a lot of them might use Zen 3. And, you know, if you're think about it, right? If you're having capacity problems, if your 12 nanometer is still competitive with Intel's 10 nanometer mobile chips, and if, and if you know Zen 3 is around the corner, why would you launch a Zen 2 mobile chip? You might as well just keep making Zen plus 12 nanometer and then switch over to Zen 3 mobile chips when you know you can crush Intel and have capacity. I think that's one reason we're still seeing so many 12 nanometer chips. I'm gonna have a lot more to say about that probably though on my a video I have coming out hopefully this week. Hope I answer your question. Yeah, I think you're getting super APUs by the end of next year. Do I think AMD will fix the encoding issues? I do. You know, that's why I use Radeon 7, though. It's Vega. It's established. It's well supported. Vega has years of drivers making it run perfectly. And that I care about stability now. I care about stability because I can't have this crash while I'm talking to you. When I was mining, rendering the next podcast for YouTube, and doing research and taking notes for a script for a video today at the same time, I forgot I was still mining. That's why I use Vega. That certainly wouldn't happen with RDNA yet. But RDNA is better than Vega if you're gaming, that's for sure. Do I think Google Stadia may make PCs obsolete in some ways? I think eventually streaming will make some forms of PCs obsolete, but I'm not convinced yet. Again, I think people are underestimating the potential that Stadia is just going to make the market bigger. Everyone said smartphone was going to kill console and PC, and console was going to kill desktops. But what happened? The market got bigger. It got bigger. That's what happened. And I think Stadia is, imagine if there's a new Assassin's Creed you thought looked cool, and you were on YouTube, and you're like, oh, new Assassin's Creed, click the button to play now. And what if literally clicking the button streamed the game in 720p ultra settings, and you could literally play it in 5 seconds? What if you could literally try out a game that's 2 years old in 5 seconds? That's the future of Stadia. That's not killing desktop. What that's going to do is make older games probably become free to play, and they'll have more ads pop up. But that's fine, right? That's a future. That's where Stadia will find its footing, I think. I think if that's what Google's focusing on, they're going to be wildly successful. But I do not see Stadia replacing anything. I see it expanding the market. Why is everyone saying things are doomed? We're not doomed. And again, about latency, do you really care that much about latency when you're playing the game for free? I mean, you put, right, what's a game, right? Let me try to think of an example. Like Rage 2. I haven't played Rage 2, but if it popped up as an ad and it said I could play it for free right now and the latency was just barely not annoying, I'd rather play it for free. You know, that's making the market bigger. That's bringing money to devs that they couldn't even get before because no one wants to pay $5. Feel like someone just tried to send me a beer tip. Hungarian dollars. So you're in Hungary. HUF. All right, I'll get one more beer. But this will be the last one, I think. I'll be right back. All right, this one is Resurrection, another Maryland beer. I was sent like 12 beers by this guy. All right. Thank you for the tip. Do you think of Zen 2 and chiplet designs are great? Yeah, I feel like that's a non-question. I obviously think Zen 2 is pretty good. Okay. Let's scroll down. When are we getting Star Trek organic computers, which is really, from what I've been told, the most efficient form of a computer you can have? 50 years, honestly. I don't. That'll be a thing eventually. Yeah, it might be less than that, actually. It might be 20 years because we're going to move to graphene. We'll start looking at other forms of processors, including quantum. 20 years, I think we're going to have all different types of processors, and some of them might be organic. I guess I'll say that. So whatever do you think this technology is coming? Probably. There's a lot of people. We got billions of people working on all types of stuff. We're going to make all kinds of gains, guys. All kinds. Really nice chair. I like it. I have an RTX. I want to go back to AMD, but FreeSync's fine. FreeSync on my TV back there that looks like a nuclear reactor. It's my Chernobyl TV. Yeah, FreeSync's fine, guys. Nicola Georgiev asked, do you think the GPU market will turn out to be similar to the mobile phone market in the future? I'm not sure what that means. I'm guessing you mean, though, that it becomes more expensive and less innovation over time. I don't know if I agree with that, though. I feel like phones continue to get better and better cameras. Obviously not as good as the one I have here, but they keep getting better, and will they keep getting expensive? You guys got to understand that inflation's a real thing right now, like a real thing. I know they say it isn't. I know your bread's the same cost, but rent's up, healthcare costs are up. What was it? Andreas Antonopoulos, I saw in a talk he gave, said, yeah, inflation is steady unless you need to have healthcare or own a place to live. Inflation's up, guys. And that goes into electronics as well. It's what I say about the 5700 XT. If you account for inflation, it's the same price as the 7870. And the 7870 was an above average mid-range card. It was really basically just barely high end, which is what I say in my chart. It's a barely high end card, the 5700 XT. A little off subject answer there, though. Yeah, I know, and that's a lucky American talking. Someone there in Canada says inflation's worse. I'll actually be in Canada in under a week for a business trip. So just throwing that out there. Which now's the time I'll announce this for you guys. Spread the word. I'll be in Canada in a week. So this is the content for the week. And then also a Paul Not an Apple Fan podcast coming out and to YouTube on Tuesday. Premium subscribers will get it tomorrow, though, if you want to listen to me and Paul talk. Actually, I thought that was one of the best Broken Silicon episodes, me and Paul. And then I have a die shrink coming out Friday. So that's the content for this week. I'm sure I'll shove in another video because I always seem to come up with more content. But just keep that in mind. Don't get mad at me, right? I'll be in Toronto. No, AMD is not sitting still. Oh, I'll take pictures with my new camera. You can bet it, guys. Not sure where to put them, though. Let me know where you would want me to put those. I'm considering making the credits at the end of my video just be pictures I take that month. Like, I don't know if you guys listen to Flyover States, but 2 more episodes of Flyover States have come out in the past 2 weeks. One's about Trump's impeachment, and then another one's about 9/11. So, and in those on YouTube, I put the pictures, because I drive all over the Midwest for my job. So I take pictures while I'm driving of cool things I see. Like, you'd be surprised the amount of people that live on farms that just make this amazing art piece in the middle of nowhere and just put it on their lawn. And I've been taking pictures of them. So listen to Flyover States, guys. It's on YouTube and podcast platforms. It's starting to rain out there. I'm considering doing that for the credits, like just like my pictures of my dog for the credits. We'll see. Depends what you guys want. You guys tell me. You guys tell me what you want. Could I put a link in the stream? Why not? I see the question. I'll answer it. Give me a sec. As usual, the Trump episode was a little divisive. Surprise. But I'm being objective. Here is the channel Flyover States. There you go. And if you support me on Flyover States, I'm going to be honest, guys. If you guys like Flyover States, $1 a month or so on Patreon helps. Because right now I'm using a way of server hosting where it has a limit. And Broken Silicon was popular immediately. So I was able to afford hosting dedicated servers right away that could keep unlimited downloads and unlimited streaming minutes. But Flyover States is kind of getting to the limit. So if you want more, I recommend supporting it. But, I'm not asking for too much with Flyover States. I just want enough that I can afford to keep throwing one out a month because I do enjoy it. And it stops me from getting political on my main channel. All right. That's enough about that. Omicron's Nomad Soul asks, will USB 4, Thunderbolt 3, bandwidth be exceeded by near future graphics cards on an eGPU setup? That's the thing about bandwidth with GPUs right now is the next gen consoles are going to have dedicated hardware that I worry will really stress. I think we're going to start to see PCI 2.0 not cut it anymore, and 3.0 will have some problems in some games. But usually it's only at certain performance levels. Like I was able to get with PCI 1.0, most games still ran fine, as long as you don't want to run at a really high refresh rate. So I don't know. I do think 4.0 may become a standard faster than you guys expect. And 3.0 might have some performance losses within 2 years. It's because of the next gen consoles. Yeah, I wish Thunderbolt and USB would catch up completely with PCIe so we could get some good external stuff. Because I'm going to be honest, I'm going to do a desktop upgrade again. This year, I'm hoping to get 24 core Threadripper, or if not, just a 12 core 3900 non-X. I'm thinking of just to save money because I think better audio and camera equipment is more important for you guys. But again, it's about priorities. But long term, like 5 years from now, I would love if I could get a 16 core APU that did everything, and then I just plugged it into a dedicated graphics card with an extra hard drive when I'm at home, so I could do more stuff on the road. I would love to visit AMD, NVIDIA, Intel, and do more stuff on the road. I like traveling. I like interviewing people. I'd love to go to people's houses and interview people who work in the industry. That's the type of stuff I want to do long term. And so I hope USB 4 will allow me to have just a super laptop processor and an external drive. But I still don't think they're there yet. Those external drives that have a 580, why do you have an external drive? They make laptops for the same price that have something as strong as a 580. So, all right. Answered that question. Google doesn't like my credit card for some reason. Yeah, that type of shit sucks. I've had that before. Except Bitcoin. Well, 16 core, 14 nanometer Intel CPU. I don't think they could sell that for too cheap. That's the problem. They have capacity issues. They can't make these 14 nanometer 16 cores. They literally, they can't make enough of them if they had that many cores. Here's a good question. C-Sesh asks, what do you think about people saying fine wine is just AMD having bad drivers at launch? It's both. It's not just bad drivers at launch. It's just AMD also builds architectures that they support for a decade, literally sometimes, I guess, with GCN straight. And when you have a architecture you use for a decade, one that's also used by consoles, you can really, really optimize it. And so it's both. But I actually don't like the fine wine meme either. I agree half of it is they should just work with good drivers at launch. Although the drivers work at launch, I have better experiences with AMD drivers at launch than NVIDIA. NVIDIA will have better performance at launch, but it'll have more crashes. And I hate crashing. I'd rather just play my new game. So I got Borderlands on PS4. Yeah, sorry, by the way, if you got it on the Epic Game Store, I've seen the issues you've probably been dealing with Borderlands. And I just don't want to deal with that stuff. Especially the more busy I get, right, guys? I keep getting more and more busy. I have a day job that is actually, despite what you might think, very important. And then I also do this. I don't. And that makes me use consoles a little more just so I know it works. I'll say my new camera is one that I believe came out in the past month. And I've never seen better pictures taken. Yeah. I don't want to say what it is, though, because I don't want you guys to judge me. The fact is, it's a very expensive camera I got so that over the next few years, as I get better hardware, nothing will hold me back. And you'll get the best quality video. For live streams, I'm still going to use this, though. I think for now, because it's honestly YouTube. YouTube's being real shitty with cameras. I'm gonna have to figure that out. All right, Paulo writes in and asks, what is the future for cloud hardware subscriptions like Stadia? The future for cloud hardware subscriptions is free. The future is free. The future is an advertisement for a new Assassin's Creed, one I would never spend money on, but I can click it and play it, and they can update the advertisements in the background with whoever's paying them at the moment. Especially in modern games, right? If you're playing Cyberpunk, a lot of people are going to buy Cyberpunk 2077 right, when it comes out. And they'll buy it the next year and the next year. What about 5 years from now? How much can you actually sell Cyberpunk for in 5 years? Everyone who wanted that game bought it by then. But you could have an ad for Cyberpunk and have it be free. You click on it, it runs in 1080p, 60 frames. In 5 years, that's not very good. And it has new advertisements pop up on billboards while you're running around for whoever's paying them at the moment. So maybe a Subway ad, and then Wendy's pays more than a Wendy's ad while people are playing. That's the future of streaming games. That's the future. And that does something we haven't had before. I can't click on ads and play games instantly. And I don't want to pay money for some games, but I'd love to play them for free with advertisements and try them out. And maybe then I would buy them. That's the future of streaming, I think. That's what I think. All right. Getting a bit hungry. And I think I'm starting to ramble a little bit. So if there's any last minute questions, tip it in now. Otherwise, I've told you, this is the video that you can watch for the rest of the week. And podcast in a couple days. Tomorrow, if you're a premium supporter. And I'll try to get a video out by Friday, but I will be in another country, so we'll see what happens. But a new die shrink also comes out Friday, so there will be, tons of content this week anyways. All right. Any last? See you guys signing off, so. Seems to me there might not be a bunch of questions. What field do I work in? I'm an engineer with a minor in international studies. So sales engineering. Any new info on HBM2E? Nothing really new except someone's insisting AMD is going to use it in the new generation. So I don't think it's hogwash. I think HBM2E is going to be used. Just like GDR5X is. Just like NVIDIA used GDR5X and AMD didn't. I think AMD will use HBM2E and NVIDIA won't. So I think it's interesting. What's the advantage of HBM2E? Well, it lets you go up to 12 high stacks, which right now you can only do 8 high stacks. So it's like 256-bit, I believe, per 4 gigabytes. Well, HBM2E will let you go up to, 384-bit per 4, so 6 gigabytes per stack. So you could get to 24 gigabytes with 4 stacks or something like that, effectively. And also it uses less energy and it can get up to like 50% more bandwidth. So effectively, you can get up to double the capacity in the same space with 50% more bandwidth. And that's a big deal. That would allow you to have an 8 gigabyte card that's 1024-bit instead of 2048-bit, making the cost of the card even cheaper, even though it uses HBM, and it will use less energy, even less energy. So it's just better. It's in between HBM 3 and 2. I'm 90 inches. I don't know what that means. Do I think the consoles will use HBM2E? No, it's GDR6. Watch my old console videos. I'm going to do a new series on it eventually, but no. The next gen consoles are GDR6. I'm not exactly sure what's in the next Xbox. I think the next Xbox is 16 gigabytes, potentially Zen 3, a little bit of a weaker graphics card, but I think it might run full Windows. And the PS5 will have PS5 will have a Pro version that should beat the 2080 Ti, but be expensive, $500 probably, which is expensive for a console. I know you guys are calling me crazy, but I'll be right. And it'll have 20 gigabytes of GDR6 320-bit with 4 gigabytes of GDR4 for background tasks. And then the PS5 Slim will have no disc player, maybe no backwards compatibility. We'll see. And it will be like 20 gigabytes total instead of 24 gigabytes. So like it'll be like a 1440p 60 console instead of a 4K 60 console. But the reason they're doing that is so they can have a cut down PS5 die that they use for the PS5 Slim. And because some people still don't have 4K TVs, and some people don't care about 60 frames. That might surprise you, but they might make a weaker console that just does 4K 30 hertz. You know, so I think that's what they're doing. What's this about that flag? Yeah, it's just a 13 colonies flag. Yeah, that's what I run. Do I think Microsoft's new console will be a full PC? I certainly hope so, guys. Like, I really do hope so. I think that trying to compete with Sony head to head is a fool's errand, as Nintendo proved with the N64. I really feel like Microsoft could hit a new stride. I talk about this in detail with Not an Apple Fan, which comes out tomorrow if you're a premium member. And we talk about how we both agree, I believe, that Microsoft needs to make the next Xbox run full Windows, but have an option to boot into a SteamOS like version of Windows that's just as easy to use as an Xbox and just runs games. Like, that would be awesome because you're never going to beat Sony at their own game, but I don't want them to beat Sony at their own game. I want different options. And when you have two consoles that do the same thing, it's so boring. But imagine if there was a $400 or a $500 Xbox that ran full Windows and was good at rendering and good at professional tasks, and it was just $500 that could game in 4K. Maybe it's weaker than the PlayStation. Maybe it doesn't have the same exclusives. But if it runs full Windows, I might get it. Dan said he would consider getting it just to use as his PC. And it's like, honestly, I'm getting pissed because it's like Microsoft is holding themselves back. I just don't get it. I'm not a PlayStation fanboy. I know what's going on, and I don't get why Microsoft is so stupid. All right, guys, got to rise out of me. When do you think we'll be getting DDR5 on desktop? 2022. Well, no, because Zen 3 is supposedly going to have DDR5 support. So 2021. I think DDR5 is 2021. Thank you for the tip, Eduardo. See, all of you are saying you'd buy that Xbox. You're all saying you would buy it. This is like if you listen to the new Broken Silicon that came out a week ago with me and Dan, and I go, Sony should do this, 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 this. And if Sony doesn't, they're stupid. And that's what I'd say about Microsoft. I don't know if Microsoft is necessarily going to do this, but I'm getting hints they will. And if they don't, they're fucking stupid. Like, it's just so annoying. Like, I just don't know why Microsoft has to try to compete with PlayStation when they could just make something different. Same with Nintendo. Just make something different. And that was the initial goal of Xbox. They wanted to bring Windows into the living room. Well, they never did. Instead, they made Xbox compete with PC. So dumb. Outlook and Xbox, sign me up. It's pretty funny. When I said GPU market could turn out like, okay, so someone's correcting themselves. Nicolas says, when I said GPU market could turn out like the phone market, I meant more innovation, but higher and higher prices. Yeah, that's something that me and good old Gamer talk about in Broken Silicon. Chris brings up a very good point where he says that there will always be budget and mid-range cards, but that this new $1,500 tier is an interesting idea because then they can throw the best technology. Like they can make a 600 millimeter 600 millimeter squared 6 nanometer die with HBM2E and sell it for $1,500, and then you get the best. And I do think that's coming. I do think there's just going to be a higher tier for graphics cards eventually, but I don't think you're ever going to be forced to get it. At least I hope not. I could see it turning out that way, though. I could. If that's what you mean by the cell phone market, I could. All right, guys. I'm not going over 2 hours ever again. And of course, I've gone way longer than I expected. I enjoy talking to you, though. So now last minutes here. And keep in mind, I'm not going over 2 hours. You went longer than you wanted to as well. Yeah, well, I hope I'm entertaining. Yeah, yeah, I think I'm going to end it here. Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for supporting me. New Broken Silicon for premium members tomorrow. New Die Shrink this week. Everyone gets the new Broken Silicon there. Consider supporting me. I got this new camera here. It's pretty damn advanced. It can do 1000 hertz 1080p recording. It can do 4K at night. It is an insane camera. And it's because I think you guys deserve the best because you're supporting me. And I want to grow this platform as big as it can get. And I will. I will if you support me. So thank you for the support. Tell your friends about Broken Silicon and Moore's Law is dead. Flyover States exists is what I'll say about Flyover States. Yeah, if you want more Flyover States, support that too, right? I'm not asking for a ton of support for Flyover States, but if I could get to, I was at least making enough to host it on a good server, that'd be good. Then I'll keep doing it. But otherwise, the next episode might be the last one, just because it's not really worth the money. Why don't AMD use 6-core yields to make a 48-core? Well, they are. All right. Thank you, Toner Inc. Oh, yeah. I've noticed you before, Toner Inc. I love the name Toner Inc. All right. Thank you, everybody. Peace.